Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UFS Phoenix as stars streaked past the main viewer. His ship had been exploring the outer rim of human space for 6 months now, mapping new systems and looking for planets that could support human life. The Phoenix was not the biggest ship in the fleet, but it was fast and had the best sensors money could buy. Jake liked it that way because speed and information were what kept explorers alive out here in the unknown. The communication officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter, suddenly looked up from his station with wide eyes. He had been monitoring the usual space traffic when something strange appeared on his screens. Jake walked over to see what had caught the young officer's attention. The display showed a signal unlike anything they had seen before. It was not human, that much was clear, but it was also different from the few alien races humanity had met during their expansion into space. Dr. Lisa Chang hurried to the bridge when Jake called for her. She was the ship's expert on alien life and languages, a brilliant woman who had spent years learning how different species communicated. Lisa took one look at the signal, and her face went pale. She had seen similar patterns before, but never this complex and never from so many different sources at once. The signal was actually dozens of different alien languages all mixed together, like a massive conference call between species from across the galaxy. Jake ordered the signal to be recorded and sent to the secure communication room, where Lisa could work on decoding it without interruption. For the next 3 hours, the Phoenix continued on its patrol route, while Lisa worked with the ship's computer to break down the alien transmission. What she found made her hands shake as she typed her report. The transmission was a planning session between 43 different alien species. Each species had sent representatives to discuss what they called the human problem. Lisa translated fragments of conversation that spoke about human expansion rates, human adaptability, and human unpredictability. The aliens were afraid of humanity, but not in the way Jake had expected. They were not afraid of human weapons or human ships. They were afraid of what humans might become if left to grow unchecked. The meeting had been organized by 3 major alien powers. The Vexthari were an ancient race that looked like walking crystals, and were known for their ability to think many steps ahead in any situation. The Zephyrian Collective was a species that shared thoughts between all members of their race, making them perfect for coordinated attacks. The Korath Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had weapons that could destroy entire moons. These 3 had convinced 40 other species to join them in something they called the Galactic Unity Coalition. Lisa brought her findings to Jake in his ready room. She spread out printouts of translated text across his desk and pointed to the most important parts. The coalition had already begun moving ships toward human space. Their plan was simple and terrifying. They would give humanity one chance to surrender and accept alien rule. If humans refused, every alien ship in the coalition would attack at once until no human remained alive anywhere in the galaxy. Jake read through the translations twice before the full meaning hit him. This was not just a threat from one hostile species. This was every major power in the known galaxy working together with one goal: to wipe out humanity completely. The coalition had more ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience fighting wars across space. Humanity had been in space for less than 400 years and had never faced anything like this. The captain immediately ordered a course change back toward Earth. The Phoenix would need to travel for 2 weeks at maximum speed to reach the Sol system and deliver this information to Admiral Peter Kane at Earth Command. Jake also sent an encrypted message ahead, but he knew that such important news needed to be delivered in person, with all the evidence Lisa had gathered. During the journey home, Jake could not stop thinking about what they had discovered. He walked through the ship's corridors and looked at his crew of 38 men and women. These people trusted him to keep them safe, but how could anyone stay safe when the entire galaxy wanted humanity dead? The crew could sense something was wrong, but Jake could not tell them the truth yet. That kind of news would have to come from people much higher up the chain of command. Dr. Chang continued working on the alien transmission, finding new pieces of information every day. She learned that the coalition had been planning this for over a year. They had studied human tactics, human technology, and human psychology. The aliens thought they understood everything about humanity, but Lisa suspected they had missed something important. Humans did not think like other species. Where aliens planned and calculated, humans adapted and improvised. The coalition was preparing to fight the humans they expected to find, not the humans they would actually face. On the 10th day of their journey, the Phoenix detected 3 small ships following them. These were not human vessels, and they were clearly trying to stay hidden behind asteroids and gas clouds. Jake realized that the coalition had already begun sending scout ships into human space. The enemy was watching and learning, gathering information for the coming war. Jake ordered the Phoenix to change course and increase speed. The alien ships tried to follow, but the Phoenix was faster and knew these star systems better. After 6 hours of careful maneuvering, Jake was satisfied that they had lost their pursuers. But the message was clear. The coalition was not waiting. They were already here, watching and preparing. When the Phoenix finally arrived at Earth, Jake immediately requested a meeting with Admiral Kane. The Admiral was a stern man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He listened without interruption as Jake and Lisa explained everything they had discovered. When they finished, the Admiral sat quietly for a long moment before speaking. Admiral Kane thanked them for their service and dismissed them with orders to keep the information classified. But Jake could see in the Admiral's eyes that the man was already thinking about what came next. Humanity had survived ice ages, world wars, and the challenges of space travel. Now they would face their greatest test yet. The question was not whether the coalition would come. The question was whether humanity would be ready when they did. 6 months passed after Captain Morrison delivered his warning to Earth Command. During this time, Admiral Kane had been working day and night to prepare humanity for what was coming. Every human colony received new defensive equipment and trained soldiers. Every ship in the human fleet was upgraded with the best weapons and shields available. But deep down, everyone knew it would not be enough against 43 alien species working together. President Maria Rodriguez sat in the Oval Office reading reports from across human space. The woman had been elected 3 years ago on promises of peaceful expansion and better trade with alien species. Now she faced the possibility of total war against enemies humanity had never even met. Her advisors told her that surrender might be the only way to save human lives. Maria listened to their concerns but kept thinking about her grandfather's stories from World War III. He had always said that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. The coalition's message arrived on a Tuesday morning through official diplomatic channels. Ambassador Krelak appeared on screens across human space as a 7-foot-tall creature that looked like a giant mantis made of metal and chitin. His voice was translated by computers, but the cold tone needed no translation. The coalition had decided to be generous, he said. Humanity would have 30 days to evacuate all colonies and return to Earth. There they would live under coalition supervision and guidance. Any resistance would result in complete extinction. Maria watched the message 3 times before calling an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every human colony gathered in person or through holographic projection. The debate lasted 18 hours as elected officials argued about humanity's response. Some wanted to negotiate for better terms. Others suggested accepting the ultimatum to save lives. A few called for immediate military action. When Maria finally stood to address the assembly, the room fell silent. She spoke without notes, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the great hall. She reminded the representatives of humanity's long history of facing impossible challenges and somehow finding a way to survive. She talked about the first humans who left Earth to build new homes among the stars. She mentioned the colonists who had died to establish humanity's presence in space. Then she asked a simple question that changed everything. Did they want to be remembered as the generation that gave up, or the generation that stood up? The vote was not even close. 347 representatives voted to reject the coalition's ultimatum. Only 23 voted to accept it. Humanity would fight, even if it meant extinction. Maria sent the coalition a simple message in response. Humanity belonged to the stars now, and no force in the galaxy would drive them back into hiding. General Sam Collins had been expecting this decision and was already moving military assets into position. The Kepler 442 system was chosen as the first major defensive position because it controlled access to 3 important human colonies. Captain Amy Foster commanded the defensive fleet there, 12 ships that represented nearly a third of humanity's total military strength. Foster was a veteran of several skirmishes with pirates and hostile aliens. She had never backed down from a fight in her life. Foster's engineers worked around the clock to prepare the Kepler 442 system for the Coalition's arrival. They turned every asteroid in the outer belt into a potential weapon by filling them with modified mining charges. They set up sensor networks that could detect approaching ships from 3 star systems away. Most importantly, they studied every piece of intelligence about Coalition tactics and technology that Captain Morrison had provided. The Coalition fleet arrived exactly 30 days after their ultimatum expired. 300 ships of different designs dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Foster had expected maybe 50 ships, but the Coalition had sent 6 times that number. Each vessel was larger and more advanced than anything in the human fleet. Their weapons could punch through human shields like they were made of paper. Their hulls could absorb direct hits from human plasma cannons without taking serious damage. But the Coalition had made one critical mistake. They expected to find frightened humans running away in cargo ships and civilian transports. Instead, they found Captain Foster's fleet waiting for them in a carefully chosen position near the asteroid belt. The human ships looked tiny compared to the alien vessels, but they were exactly where Foster wanted them to be. The battle began when the Coalition's lead ship demanded Foster's surrender. Her response was a full spread of nuclear torpedoes aimed at the alien formation's center. The Coalition ships scattered to avoid the attack, but this put them exactly where Foster had hoped they would go. As the alien vessels moved through the asteroid belt, the hidden mining charges began exploding around them. What followed was unlike any space battle in human history. The Coalition ships fought with perfect coordination, their movements synchronized like parts of a single massive machine. When one ship took damage, 2 others moved to cover it, while a third provided fire support. Their weapon systems targeted human weak points with deadly accuracy. In the first hour of fighting, Foster lost 4 ships to enemy fire, but humans fought differently than the Coalition expected. Where aliens followed predetermined battle patterns, humans adapted their tactics every few minutes. When Foster realized that direct combat was hopeless, she ordered her ships to use the asteroids as cover while launching hit-and-run attacks. When the Coalition began predicting these attacks, Foster changed tactics again and began using the gas giant's radiation to hide her ships from alien sensors. The turning point came when Foster's flagship took critical damage from 3 Coalition ships attacking at once. Her engines were failing and her weapons were offline. The logical thing to do would have been to retreat and save the ship and crew. Instead, Foster ordered all power to the engines and aimed her ship directly at the Coalition's command vessel. The alien captain tried to move out of the way, but Foster had calculated the trajectory perfectly. The collision destroyed both ships instantly, but it also killed the Coalition's fleet commander and damaged their main communication relay. Suddenly, the perfect alien coordination began to break down as different ships started following conflicting orders from their home species. Foster's sacrifice had given her remaining ships the opening they needed. The human survivors pressed their attack and managed to destroy 6 more Coalition vessels before the aliens finally retreated. News of the victory spread across human space within hours. Humanity had faced impossible odds and somehow won their first major battle against the Coalition. President Rodriguez addressed the nation that evening, praising Captain Foster's heroism and promising that humanity would continue to fight for freedom among the stars. But Admiral Kane knew this was just the beginning. The Coalition had sent only a small fraction of their total fleet to test human defenses. The real war was still coming, and it would be bigger and more brutal than anything Foster's brave crew had faced. Kane began preparing for a long conflict that would test every human colony and every human heart. The Coalition had learned that humans would not surrender easily. Now they would learn what happened when humanity fought for survival. The war that followed lasted 18 months and spread across 12 star systems. After their defeat at Kepler 442, The coalition had learned not to underestimate human determination. They began sending larger fleets with better coordination and more powerful weapons. What had started as a quick campaign to remove the human threat became a grinding war of attrition that neither side had expected. Commander Rick Sullivan led the human response from a secret base hidden in the asteroid fields of the Ross 128 system. His job was to organize guerrilla attacks against coalition supply lines and communication networks. Sullivan had been a Marine before, transferring to the Space Navy, and he understood that conventional battles would only lead to human defeat. The coalition had too many ships and too much firepower for humanity to win through direct confrontation. Sullivan's raiders used captured alien technology whenever possible. After each successful attack, his teams would salvage everything they could from destroyed coalition ships. The Vexthari crystal drives were incredibly efficient and could power human ships for months without refueling. The Korath energy cannons could punch through any armor the coalition possessed. Most importantly, the Zephyrian communication systems allowed humans to listen in on alien battle plans and coordination signals. Chief Engineer Kate Murphy worked with Sullivan's technical teams to integrate alien technology into human ships. This was dangerous work because alien systems were designed very differently from human equipment. Several engineers died when Korath energy cells overloaded during installation attempts. Others suffered radiation poisoning from Vexthari crystal matrices. But Murphy refused to give up because she knew that hybrid technology was humanity's only chance against superior alien numbers. The breakthrough came when Murphy figured out how to modify Zephyrian neural interfaces to work with human brains. The aliens used these devices to share thoughts instantly across their entire species, creating perfect coordination in battle. Humans could not achieve the same level of mental connection, but Murphy's modified interfaces allowed small groups of pilots to share targeting data and tactical information in real time. Captain Danny Clark commanded a squadron of 12 fighters equipped with Murphy's hybrid systems. His pilots could coordinate their attacks with inhuman precision, while still maintaining the unpredictability that made humans so dangerous in combat. Clark used these advantages to devastating effect during the battle for Tau Ceti, where his squadron destroyed 30 coalition ships while losing only 2 of their own. But Clark's greatest victory came when he pretended to retreat from the Tau Ceti system with his entire fleet. The coalition forces followed, expecting to finish off the humans in open space. Instead, Clark led them into the gas giant's upper atmosphere, where the hybrid human-alien sensors could track coalition ships through the methane storms, while the aliens flew blind. Clark's fleet stayed hidden in the atmospheric layers for 3 weeks, ambushing coalition patrols and supply convoys while the alien commanders searched desperately for their missing enemy. Dr. Helen Price made perhaps the most important discovery of the war while working at the captured coalition communication station on Proxima Centauri. Price was a linguist who specialized in alien psychology and social structures. She had been studying coalition transmissions for months, trying to understand how 43 different species managed to work together so effectively. What she found changed humanity's entire approach to the war. The coalition was not as united as they appeared. Each species maintained its own command structure and followed orders from their own leaders first and coalition commanders second. The Vexthari considered themselves the natural leaders of the alliance and often made decisions without consulting other species. The Korath Empire resented taking orders from anyone and frequently ignored coalition battle plans. The Zephyrian collective shared information freely among their own kind, but kept secrets from their alien allies. Price discovered that these tensions created tiny delays in coalition coordination. When a Vexthari commander gave an order, it had to be translated and approved by Korath and Zephyrian leaders before their ships would respond. These delays lasted only seconds, but human pilots like Commander Tony Wright learned to exploit them with devastating effectiveness. Wright would time his attacks to coincide with moments when coalition ships were waiting for orders from multiple command authorities. The most revealing discovery came when Price found personal communications between coalition leaders, the aliens, were arguing among themselves about strategy, resources, and command authority. Some species wanted to negotiate with humanity, while others demanded total extermination. The Reltach Confederation was already suggesting withdrawal from the coalition because their ships were taking heavy casualties while other species kept their fleets in safer positions. Lieutenant Grace Park led the mission that captured the coalition supply depot in the Wolf 359 system. The depot contained enough weapons and supplies to outfit 3 coalition fleets, but Park was more interested in the intelligence data stored in the facility's computers. She found detailed files on every coalition species, including their military capabilities, political structures, and historical conflicts with each other. The files revealed that many coalition members had been enemies before the human threat brought them together. The Vexthari had fought a century-long war with the Korath Empire over mining rights in the Galactic Core. The Zephyrian Collective had enslaved 2 smaller species that were now reluctant coalition members. A dozen species had territorial disputes that were barely held in check by the Alliance against humanity. Park's intelligence team also discovered something that explained the coalition's desperate fear of humanity. According to their projections, human population and technology would reach critical levels within 50 years. At that point, humanity would be too strong for any single alien species to defeat, and too numerous to contain within their current territory. The coalition believed they had to act now or face human domination of the entire galaxy within a century. Armed with this intelligence, human forces began targeting coalition weak points with surgical precision. Sullivan's raiders would attack Vexithari supply convoys while broadcasting fake messages suggesting that Korath forces were responsible. Wright's fighter squadrons would disable communication relays between different alien species, forcing coalition commanders to make critical decisions without input from their allies. The psychological warfare campaign reached its peak when human intelligence officers began spreading rumors about secret negotiations between different coalition members. They suggested that the Vexthari were planning to claim the richest human colonies for themselves after victory. They implied that the Korath Empire was considering a separate peace deal with humanity. They hinted that several smaller species were plotting to overthrow their larger allies once the human threat was eliminated. These rumors found fertile ground because they played on real tensions that already existed within the coalition. Species that had distrusted each other for centuries found it easy to believe that their allies might betray them for advantage. Coalition commanders began keeping critical information from their supposed allies. Response times to emergency requests for support grew longer as each species became more concerned with protecting their own forces than supporting coalition objectives. The war's momentum began shifting in humanity's favor as the coalition's unity cracked under psychological pressure. Human forces equipped with hybrid technology and fighting with new confidence started winning battles they would have lost a year earlier. Admiral Kane's main fleet retook 3 star systems in a 2-month campaign that saw several coalition species accidentally fire on each other during the confusion of battle. But the coalition still had overwhelming numerical superiority and was far from defeated. Their leaders recognized that internal divisions were weakening their cause and began taking steps to restore unity and discipline. The real test of humanity's survival would come in the battles ahead, where human courage and ingenuity would face the full might of 43 alien species united in their determination to see humanity destroyed forever. President Rodriguez sat in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon as Admiral Kane explained the new phase of humanity's war strategy. The intelligence gathered by Lieutenant Park and Dr. Price had revealed critical weaknesses in the coalition structure. Instead of simply fighting a defensive war, humanity would now actively work to destroy the alliance from within by exploiting the natural tensions between different alien species. Admiral Kane had authorized Operation Fracture, a campaign designed to turn the coalition members against each other through carefully planned deception and psychological manipulation. The operation would be led by Agent Carl Hughes, a veteran intelligence officer who had spent years studying alien psychology and social dynamics. Hughes understood that the coalition's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. The more species involved in their alliance, the more opportunities existed for mistrust and betrayal. Hughes began by establishing covert communication networks that could intercept and modify messages between different coalition fleets. His team of specialists had learned to perfectly replicate the communication protocols used by each alien species. They could create false messages that would appear completely authentic to the recipients, even under careful examination by alien intelligence experts. The first target was the relationship between the Vexthari leadership and their Korath allies. Hughes created a series of intercepted messages suggesting that Vexthari commanders were planning to claim the most valuable human territories for themselves after victory. The messages indicated that Korath forces were being deliberately sent to the most dangerous battle zones, while Vexthari ships remained in safer positions away from human counterattacks. These false messages were carefully inserted into regular coalition communications in a way that made them appear to be accidental leaks rather than deliberate intelligence. Korath commanders reading the intercepted communications naturally assumed they were seeing secret Vexthari planning documents. Within weeks, Korath fleet dispositions began changing as their commanders positioned their ships to secure strategic locations for their own empire rather than supporting overall coalition objectives. Captain Nina Torres commanded the stealth ship UFS Ghost, which had been equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology humanity possessed. The Ghost could remain undetected even when passing close to coalition vessels, making it perfect for intelligence gathering and sabotage missions. Torres and her crew of 20 specialists spent months moving between coalition fleets, installing listening devices and communication jammers while studying alien tactics and psychology. Torres discovered that coalition coordination depended heavily on real-time communication between fleet commanders and their home governments. Each species maintained political officers aboard their ships who could override military decisions if they conflicted with their government's interests. This created opportunities for disruption that human forces quickly learned to exploit. The Ghost began selectively jamming or delaying critical communications at key moments during coalition operations. When Vexthari commanders requested permission to engage human forces, their messages would be delayed just long enough for the tactical situation to change. When Korath political officers tried to coordinate with their military commanders, their communications would be redirected through channels controlled by other species, creating confusion about command authority. Dr. Price expanded her analysis of coalition psychology by studying captured prisoners from different alien species. She discovered that each species had different concepts of honor, loyalty, and acceptable losses in warfare. The Vexthari valued careful planning and minimal casualties above quick victories. The Korath Empire considered retreat to be a form of cowardice that brought shame on entire family lines. The Zephyrian collective made decisions based on mathematical calculations of probable success rather than emotional factors like pride or honor. These psychological differences became weapons in human hands. Hughes's intelligence teams began crafting propaganda designed specifically for each alien species. Messages aimed at Vexthari commanders emphasized how other species were taking unnecessary risks that could lead to massive coalition casualties. Communications targeted at Korath forces suggested that their alien allies considered them expendable shock troops rather than respected partners. The psychological campaign's first major success came when the Reltak Confederation announced their withdrawal from the coalition after losing 12 ships in a battle where their Zephyrian allies failed to provide promised support. The Reltak commanders had been receiving false intelligence suggesting that the Zephyrians were deliberately withholding assistance to preserve their own forces for post-war territorial expansion. General Collins recognized that the Reltak withdrawal created a gap in coalition battle lines that human forces could exploit. He immediately ordered attacks on positions that had been defended by Reltak ships, achieving quick victories while the coalition scrambled to redeploy forces to cover the abandoned sectors. More importantly, the Reltak withdrawal proved to other coalition members that the alliance was not as permanent or reliable as they had believed. 4 more species left the coalition over the following 2 months, each citing different reasons for their decision. The Calyx hegemony claimed they were needed to defend their home systems against pirate attacks. The Threx Union announced they had achieved their objectives and saw no need to continue fighting. The Nebula Drifters simply stopped responding to coalition communications and disappeared into the gas clouds they called home. Each departure weakened the coalition militarily, while also creating political problems for the remaining members. Species that had contributed heavily to the war effort began questioning why they should continue fighting, while others withdrew to safety. Coalition commanders found themselves arguing with their own political leaders about resource allocation and strategic priorities instead of focusing on defeating humanity. Commander Wright exploited these divisions during the Battle of Alpha Centauri by timing his attacks to coincide with communication delays between different coalition species. His fighter squadrons would strike Vexthari positions, while their Korath allies were still waiting for orders from their government. By the time the Korath forces received permission to respond, Wright's ships had already moved to attack Zephyrian formations, whose coordination had been disrupted by selective jamming of their collective communication network. The Coalition's response to these tactics revealed the depth of mistrust that now existed within their alliance. Instead of cooperating to counter human psychological warfare, different species began conducting their own intelligence operations against their supposed allies. Vexthari ships started monitoring Korath communications for signs of betrayal. Korath commanders began keeping critical tactical information from their Zephyrian partners. Agent Hughes escalated the campaign by planting evidence of actual treachery within coalition ranks. His teams created fake planning documents showing that several species were negotiating secret peace deals with humanity. They fabricated communications suggesting that some coalition members were preparing to attack others once the human threat was eliminated. Most devastatingly, they produced false financial records indicating that certain species were profiting from the war by selling weapons to both sides. The psychological pressure reached a breaking point during the siege of Proxima Centauri, where coordination between coalition species broke down completely. Vexthari commanders refused to share targeting data with their Korath allies, claiming it was too sensitive for foreign species to access. Korath forces attacked human positions without waiting for Zephyrian support, resulting in heavy casualties that could have been avoided with proper coordination. Admiral Kane watched the coalition fracture from his command center on Earth and realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had turned their enemy's greatest advantage into a fatal weakness. The coalition's numerical superiority meant nothing when their forces could not trust each other enough to fight effectively. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had become a lesson in how unity based on fear and convenience would always be weaker than unity based on shared values and mutual respect. But Kane also knew that the war was far from over. The coalition still possessed enough firepower to destroy humanity if they could restore their coordination and discipline. The remaining alien species were becoming more suspicious of human psychological warfare and taking steps to counter it. The final phase of the conflict would determine whether humanity's gamble on psychological warfare would lead to victory or merely delay their ultimate defeat by enemies who had learned to overcome their differences. 2 years after the first coalition ships had appeared at Kepler 442, the Galactic Unity Coalition was falling apart. Of the original 43 species that had united against humanity, only 18 remained active in the war effort. The others had either withdrawn completely or reduced their participation to minimal levels. But those 18 species still represented enough military power to destroy every human colony if they could coordinate their attacks effectively. The Korath Empire had emerged as the dominant force in the remaining coalition after the Vexthari leadership was assassinated by their own people in a coup that human intelligence may or may not have encouraged. Emperor Thaxel, the new Korath leader, was a warrior who believed that previous coalition failures had resulted from too much talking and not enough fighting. He gathered every remaining Korath warship for one final assault on humanity's home system. Admiral Kane received intelligence reports about the Korath fleet buildup from Captain Torres and the Ghost. 300 Korath dreadnoughts were massing at the edge of coalition space, each one capable of destroying a human city with a single shot. Supporting them were smaller fleets from the surviving coalition members, bringing the total enemy force to over 400 ships. This would be the largest space battle in galactic history. President Rodriguez addressed the nation as enemy. Fleets began moving toward Sol. She spoke from the Oval Office, but her words were broadcast to every human colony and ship in space. She reminded her people that their ancestors had faced impossible odds many times throughout history and had always found a way to survive and thrive. She promised that humanity would meet this final challenge with the same courage and determination that had carried them from Earth to the stars. The battle for Sol began when the Korath fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter. Emperor Tax-Ul had chosen this approach because it would force the human defenders to fight with the gas giants, massive gravity well affecting ship movements. The Emperor expected his numerical advantage and superior firepower to overwhelm human defenses quickly, ending the war with one decisive victory. Admiral Kane commanded the human fleet from his flagship, the UFS Liberty. Every operational human warship had been called back to defend Earth, creating a defensive force of 87 ships against more than 400 enemies. Kane positioned his fleet in orbit around Europa, using the moon's ice-covered surface to provide cover, while his ship's sensors tracked the approaching enemy formation. The first phase of the battle lasted 6 hours and cost humanity 32 ships, while the coalition lost only 18. Korath energy weapons proved devastatingly effective against human shields and armor. Their dreadnoughts could absorb tremendous damage while continuing to fight. For a time, it seemed that Emperor Taxul's strategy of overwhelming force might succeed where the previous coalition approach of careful coordination had failed. But Captain Morrison, now commanding a reconnaissance squadron, returned from a scouting mission with intelligence that changed everything. The other coalition species were not supporting their Korath allies with full commitment. Instead, they were positioning their fleets at the edge of the battle zone, apparently waiting to see which side would win before deciding whether to help or retreat. Morrison had detected communication signals between the non-Korath coalition, fleets indicating that many of their commanders expected both humans and Korath forces to destroy each other. Some species were apparently planning to attack whoever survived the main battle, claiming the Sol system for themselves. This revelation spread through the human fleet and had an electrifying effect on morale. The human defenders realized they were not just fighting for survival against the Korath Empire, they were fighting for the right to exist as a free species in a galaxy where every other power wanted to either rule them or eliminate them completely. This understanding transformed the battle from a desperate last stand into a fight for human independence and dignity among the stars. Commander Foster, who had survived the original battle at Kepler 442 and now commanded the rebuilt Phoenix, led a coordinated assault on the Korath flagship. Her attack was supported by Wright's fighter squadrons and Sullivan's converted raiders, all working together with the precision that hybrid alien-human technology made possible. The combined assault overwhelmed the dreadnought's defenses and destroyed the massive ship in a brilliant explosion visible across the solar system. Emperor Taxul died with his flagship, but his death only enraged the surviving Korath commanders. They abandoned all tactical discipline and launched suicidal attacks against the human fleet, determined to take as many enemies with them as possible. This desperate fury made the Korath ships more dangerous individually, but also made them easier targets for coordinated human counterattacks. The battle's turning point came when Dr. Chang, now serving as Admiral Kane's science advisor, detected massive energy buildups in the non-Korath coalition ships. These forces were preparing to attack both the humans and their supposed Korath allies, planning to finish off whoever survived the main engagement. Chang's warning gave Kane the information he needed to make a crucial tactical decision. Kane opened communication channels to the surviving Korath commanders and offered them a temporary alliance against the species that planned to betray them, both. The Korath were too proud to accept human help directly, but they understood the tactical situation. Instead of continuing their attacks on human ships, they turned their remaining weapons against the coalition fleets that had been waiting to stab them in the back. What followed was a three-way battle that lasted another 11 hours and spread across the entire Jupiter system. Human and Korath forces found themselves fighting side by side against enemies who had been their allies minutes earlier. The irony was not lost on anyone involved. Humanity's greatest enemies had become their temporary partners against species that claimed to be their friends. The battle ended when the last non-Korath coalition ship was destroyed or driven from the system. Only 37 human ships remained operational, while the Korath had lost all but 18 of their dreadnoughts. Both fleets were too damaged to continue fighting each other, creating an unexpected ceasefire in the Jupiter system while Both sides treated their wounded and repaired their ships. The formal end of the war came 3 days later, when the surviving Korath commanders met with Admiral Kane aboard a neutral space station. The meeting was brief and conducted with military formality. The Korath acknowledged that their empire could not continue the war without allies, while humanity lacked the strength to pursue a defeated enemy across space. Both sides agreed to a cessation of hostilities and a return to pre-war boundaries. 6 months later, President Rodriguez stood before a very different Galactic Council than the one that had originally threatened humanity with extinction. The coalition no longer existed as a unified force. Several species had been so weakened by internal conflict that they faced rebellion from their own colonies. Others were dealing with economic collapse caused by the enormous cost of the failed war. Humanity had emerged from the conflict as the strongest single military power in their region of space. Human colonies were expanding again, and human traders were establishing new relationships with former enemies who now respected human strength and determination. Most surprisingly, several of the species that had once been part of the coalition were now requesting defensive alliances with humanity against other potential threats. Rodriguez addressed the reformed council with words that would be remembered for centuries. She explained that humanity had never wanted to conquer or rule other species. They had simply wanted the freedom to build their own future among the stars. But the war had proven that forced unity based on fear and prejudice was always weaker than voluntary cooperation based on mutual respect and shared interests. The president announced that humanity was prepared to establish trade agreements, defensive pacts, and cultural exchanges with any species willing to treat them as equals rather than subjects or threats. The offer was genuinely extended to all former coalition members, including the Korath Empire, whose military honor had impressed human commanders during the final battle of the war. Captain Morrison, now promoted to admiral, watched the proceedings from the human delegation and reflected on how much had changed since he first intercepted that alien transmission 2 years ago. Humanity had faced the united opposition of 43 alien species, and had not only survived but emerged stronger than ever. They had proven that human adaptability, courage, and unity were more powerful than any combination of advanced technology and numerical superiority. The war officially ended with the signing of the Sol Accords, a treaty that established humanity as an equal member of the galactic community, with the right to defend their territory and expand their civilization. But more importantly, the conflict had demonstrated that diversity and independence were stronger than uniformity and control. The galaxy was big enough for many different species to thrive, as long as they respected each other's right to exist and grow according to their own nature and values.